those that don't know me, I'm Sharon Fox. I'm the Head of Decontamination for the University Hospitals, Birmingham. And this is what it looks like. So, just a few stats for you, but I'm going to be looking at the last two with regards to endoscopy and theatres. So currently, I manage over 80 theatres. I think it's soon to be 86, but quite sure about that. They keep building. And we have central decontamination units on each site. So we're looking after 22 procedure rooms, and that doesn't include ENT, OPD. So this is what it looks like. We've got the Good Hope Hospital, Queen Elizabeth, Heart of England and Solihull. So they are the trusts. So decontamination. What we have and what we view in UHB is two sources of decontamination: the sterile services and the central decontamination units. So in the University Hospital Birmingham, the sterile services is outsourced to a third-party provider, and they have a unit at the Kings Norton facility and the Yardley facility. And the central decontamination units, there's 4 central units. So basically anything that needs to be sterilised will go off to the sterile services, and some sterile services have got other technologies that they can do, gas plasma sterilisation. And then the central decontamination, basically what we do is take any device that requires high-level disinfection in between patient use. So we do the majority, 75–80%, as your flexible endoscopes, but we also do TOE probes, we do ENT, nasendoscopes, transvaginal probes, rectal probes, and any other probes, gamma probes. That's something else that's coming through. That's what we do at the decontamination. So what we tend to do is, or what we try to get the practitioners within theatres to adopt, is to look at the Spalding classification, and that gives them an idea how that device should be treated with regards to going to the central decontamination or going to the sterile services. So what I've put on is the standard decontamination processes. So I'm assuming everybody's seen this with regards to a sterile services, how the device moves through the system and then back to the patient. And then for this one, what I did is I sort of adopted this and changed it slightly for endoscope reprocessing. So basically, it follows the same pathway with the tray tracking system through, and then to the storage, and then back to patient use. So I'm assuming everybody's seen this one. It's an old slide that keeps coming out, but it's a late Tina Bradley was one of the investigators with regards to this incident, along with other subject matter experts. I was at a study day, I think it was last year, middle of last year, and they were all decontamination practitioners. And I said to them, do you process TOE probes? Do you know how TOE probes are processed? And there was, I think, of an audience of about 60, or there's maybe half a dozen hands. So it just shows you, even though these alerts are coming out, that we're not taking on board the importance of decontamination and looking at those devices. Again, when they did the investigation, what they did find, it was the connection arm that was the cause of contamination. This device was reprocessed in a theatre environment, so it was done by the healthcare support workers, and I believe there wasn't any tracking or tracing going on, but they thought the end that was being used was the most important, and it was the connection part that was the source of the contamination. So some of the common problems, and this is a reflection on what I've seen at my time at the university, is especially that arises in theatres, is a change in device. So I I was thinking about this the other day, and we had a situation and they wanted to change a humidifier for the tracheostomy patients within critical care unit because there was a supplies problem. So basically they changed this device, but we couldn't clean it. So then it took, it took months and months to understand and try to get over to the practitioners that, if you took this device on that you're not going to clean it properly, it could enlarge the problem. We could start infecting other patients. We've also found that if there's been a change in products which theatre staff haven't been aware of, because procurement have got a supply issue. So again, what they've done is look for the next best thing, pop that into the system so there's no problems with the service. But however, when it's come to cleaning and come to looking at the device, we found that there's been issues trying to make sure that device is safe between patient use. Also infrastructure, up and down the, sometimes I go out and help other trusts if they give me a ring and say, we've got a situation, Sharon. And I've found that when we're taking these, when we've got, flexible endoscopes that are being used in a theatre environment, if they go down to their endoscopy department and say, look, we've got this flexible scope, can you clean it? They go, no, we're just endoscopy. So what I've been challenging those that have been working and supporting is going out and looking at those areas and meeting the management team and saying, I know you do endoscopy, but could you look at taking the TOE processes on? Could you look at ENT, nase endoscopes and developing that? Because I think when I first started looking after endoscopy, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, and the endoscopy team that were funded and paid by the division for endoscopy, they very often got people just coming to the door, knocking on and saying, can you clean this for me? And they go, yeah, okay, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. And they clean it and then go away. And then they never knew when that device was coming back. It wasn't tracked. There was hundreds of problems. So what I'm saying is, if you have got those decontamination units, have a look, go in and see if there's anything that they can support you with. Policy. Again, with the policies that we've got in UHB, it's this trust strategy at UHB that any device that requires high-level disinfection has got to go through a central decontamination unit, or it's got to go through the sterile services. And we have to look at those devices that we're purchasing that meets the parameters of what they do in those areas. Again, some trusts haven't got a decontamination policy, don't know who the decontamination lead is or the head of decontamination, and so they're left to get on with it with the rep saying, well, the hospital down the road uses that device, so there isn't a problem, so carry on regardless. New consultants, oh, do I love them? Not. Every time we have a new consultant, and I very often have a stand-up debate with them. They will, if they're moving from another trust and they're not, that other trust hasn't got a central decontamination, and it's always been done by the healthcare support worker, clean it over, or they want that device to be used in there, but then you try to explain to them that device cannot be cleaned, it cannot fit the parameters, then they do come with their issues. I think now what we tend to do, when I was talking to a general manager over a theatre, I said, when we have a new consultant, what do you do? And they said, oh, we normally sit down and say, what equipment do you want? But then we say to them, this is the process that those devices will go through, so you need to ensure, or those devices don't match our parameters, so we need to look for something else. Again, appropriate quality systems in place to ensure patient safety. I'm very proud of what we've done at UHB. All our 4 sites are 13485 accredited. I'm not saying if you've got decontamination units, you need to go register with BSI or SGS, because it'll take a while and good luck, and it's quite costly. But what I'm saying is, if you put that quality system within that process for me, it sort of more or less disciplines the staff or disciplines the process to ensure that the device that we're reprocessing is fit for use. And then instructions for use. Always on my bandwagon about that. Instructions for use are an absolute nightmare. So we've got two standards. We've got the MHRA that tells us what does the instructions mean, okay? And then we've got the council directive, the standard, that's telling the manufacturers this is what you need to do. Still doesn't, hit the spot for me. IFUs are a bane of my life because every device that goes through for purchase for trial has to be signed off by me. And if I can't say, we can't clean this, you can clean it if you want to send it to America, but we can't do it, then it stops with me, well, it's Decon's fault. And I go, no, it's not Decon's fault. This is the tools that we've got. This is the procedures that we've got. So IFU concerns, we've had them where they've not stipulated the process. They stipulated a process that happens in America, dip it inside X, yay. Some of them don't stipulate their own, you have to use their own brushes with regards to flexible devices. And again, the parameters of sterilisation don't match what we do. And this is a cause for concern. And again, we keep raising it with the manufacturers. And most of my time is spent going back to the manufacturers and saying, look, what do you do? How have you validated that product to come into the UK market? But then they go back to the directives and it's a bit woolly in my eyes. Again, sterilisation parameters, we're all different, okay? And I think sometimes, maybe, I don't know whether it sounds a bit disrespectful, the theatre practitioners think, oh, you can just turn it up like you do on a microwave and just turn it down to fit in with these parameters. You can't, because the machines are set to that, the machines are tested to that, the machines are validated to that, and that same goes for your washer disinfectors as well. I was reflecting on, we had an incident in one of the theatres, and it's just when I came in as the head of service for decontamination. We've got a neuro theatres, we've got a clamp, and I think there'd been some incidences, so IPC went in and said, oh, right, okay, that clamp really needs to go through sterile services. So the theatre staff said, yeah, right, okay, so sterilised services, can we push this through? We've had them for ages, yeah, no problem. So they went off to sterile services. It wasn't a new product, it was an old product, because new products have to have the IFU. And then all of a sudden, rust started happening, bits started flaking off, and then it was Sharon, please can you come in? Why is this happening? It's the manufacturer's fault. It's the sterile services fault. So when we went back to, I think it was like the late 1900s to get the IFUs, these devices that go into theatres hadn't been validated to go through any processes. And therefore, in the end, we had to get rid of all of them and get special clamps that could go through the sterile services. Now, if we'd have picked that up or been a bit more savvy, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. Another incident we had a lovely piece of kit, a laser that happens in theatres, and it reduces the scars on the badly burnt patients. Fantastic bit of kit. I think it was developed in Israel. And basically it said on the IFU, do not send to sterile services, which was bizarre. And then I put a stop on it and said, look, we can't do this, we can't clean it, because it was saying dip it in alcohol, swing it around, and then it'll be all right. It stopped, so there was a big meeting. Sharon Fox said, we can't put this through. And then the GM said, who's brought this? How have we got this through the PAQ process? Because it was £36,000 and we can't use it because we can't clean it. And one of the lovely theatre staff put it through as an IT upgrade. So it was an IT upgrade to the stack machine, but the device that came through couldn't clean it. So What we do, or what we've got, is the PAQ process, and I'm assuming again you would have this within your own facility that says if you're doing a trial, if you're putting a new piece of equipment in, these are what you need to follow. And what I tend to do, because it's a bit tedious, I suppose, for the theatre staff to go looking through all the policies that are on the intranet, is I just refresh the memory and say, look, there is a process, you haven't got to read War and Peace, but basically this is what you need to do, and you need to check it by the decontamination team, so we can say, yes, it's fit for use, and you can go to sterile services, or yes, it's fit for use, and we can adapt it in the central decontamination. So some of the methods of processing, so out there on the market, we've got manual wipes, we've got UV, we've got pre-clean and automated, we've got thermal disinfection, and we've got sterilisation. And I did this little chart for an IPC function I went to just tell the IPC nurses, you really need to consider certain things. So if you're using a manual wipe, a disinfectant, think about the environment. Again, I've been off and asked to do trust audits, and I've gone in to look at those devices that don't go to the central, and I walked into one hospital and somebody was having a lunch while they were using a disinfectant wipe, which I was coughing because it was quite, odorous. So, and they've got a label that said clean side and a label that said dirty side on either wall, and she was still having a lunch. So people don't understand the environment. There was no tracking of tracing of these nose endoscopes. When we looked at the training, they had training about a couple of years ago. We never had a refresher training. The process time was really quick, but so they've only got like 2 scopes, and they could have, maybe expanded and had a few more scopes, and it had gone through an automated process. We didn't even know if it was compatible. We couldn't find the IFU of that device to say that wipe that we was using, was it compatible? Because sometimes it isn't, and then you start to have things to deteriorate when you spend, thousands of pounds on a product, and next minute the screen doesn't work or something doesn't work. And then, we're testing the efficacy of it. Is anybody going in there and testing them? We did an audit, it was a couple of years ago now, because when we merged, there was a lot of wipe systems used within the other 3 hospitals. So the first thing I did is went out just to calm the dipsy down and do some testing, and those devices that had been manually cleaned and they got tracking and they got training actually failed. And that's, again, a monitoring system. And I think it's far easier, as the dipsy said to me, if something breaks out, the first thing he says is, Sharon, does that device go through you? And if I say yes, and can you provide me the notice? Yes, I can. Then that takes me out of the investigation, and that helps him to look at other parts. Again, I've got, UV, we've got automated processes with AER, thermal disinfection and steam sterilisation. So normally those modes are automated, trackable, team of staff. And again, when you're working in a sterile services department or central decontamination, all parts of those processes, if you've got a quality system, are tested. So the machines are tested, the devices are tested, so that then makes a robust procedure. What I did do is for the theatre staff, and it's just up and when they go fetch the trays, is just do a little template of what our provider can provide. So if they're thinking or they're talking to a representative about buying a new piece of equipment, it's just there for them. This is what we've got, the sterile services provider, this is how they decontaminate, these are the machines, this is the detergent they've got in the process, these are the times and temperatures, does it need a pre-treatment, they've got ultrasonics, and this is a manual process. And then we did the same for central decontamination. Because again, sometimes the representatives of the manufacturers bring these devices in and they say, well, the hospital down the road, they do it, they haven't got a problem with it. and they go, okay, and they take them at the face value, and then before you know it, you know, we pass the product to the sterile services and it comes back and they say, no, I'm sorry, we can't process it. So there's lots of things to take into consideration. And then what I've also done is put some references up there for you that you can access and use them as part of, you know, your training for your teams. My decontamination team are very often go into theatre governance days where we just basically update, because if you can imagine, we've got over 80 theatres, we do have a changeover in nursing staff and theatre practitioners, so we're sort of on the billboard all the time with governance, just updating the practitioners and raising the level of the decontamination team and the sterile services. And that's it. Thank you.